Thank you. So you got to see me do the youthful run to the stage. Now you've seen the jacket, and I take the jacket off because I only wore it because it was so cold. It was 80 degrees in New York yesterday when I left. I'm very happy to be here, particularly for all the reasons that Kent just mentioned, but also because my mother and grandmother grew up on East 7th Street in South Boston, 1 mile from here. And so I'm like a salmon swimming upstream to the places of my spawning. And I'm here to talk a little bit about, I said spawning, it's like 4 in the afternoon. I'm here to talk a little bit about change and innovation in the media business. I was very excited to read the agenda for this meeting with the tracks on innovation and on data and on publishing in general. I'm thankful to Emily and to Jocelyn for inviting me, and to Tarek, who I met at the first ever publishing hackathon that we did just exactly this time last year at BEA in New York, and for giving me the opportunity to put my thoughts together on the topic of innovation in publishing. And I have a lot of slides. I'm going to talk really fast, and I apologize in advance for that, but it's so that we can sort of get through it all. But I'm happy to make these slides available, or you may be already recording and making them available, so it's all there somehow. So the title of my talk is Innovation, the Great Race, or Reinventing the Media Bicycle While You're Riding It. And this is the bike I had as a kid. I love this bike. But when you talk to most people in most organizations about change, particularly about changing the place they work, this is what they think. And it scares them, and they're pretty sure that they're going to get hurt. And, or maybe even this is what they think. They don't think this, which is really what we both want and need when we think about trying to change our organizations. And I'm here to talk a little bit about how my company has approached it, and also what are the kind of major forces at work. And hopefully it'll be a good sort of appetizer for the very impressive and interesting set of sessions you guys have over the next 2 days. I think it's a very auspicious moment for you to be gathering here, the Society for Scholarly Publishing, because at this moment, right now, the #1 nonfiction book in America is published by University Press, right here in Boston. Who knows what it is? It's 685 pages long. It has charts in it like this. Right. It's Thomas Piketty's, or Piketty's, Capital. A University Press book is not only like one of the most talked about books in the country right now, but it's actually wildly commercially successful. And you couldn't have known that when you picked this town and when you picked, this topic. But I feel like I take a sign from that any book that you publish or any product that you're making really has the potential to change the conversation and change people's minds and matter. And the biggest challenge is for people to know about it. You've got the scholars and you've got the process to turn scholarship into work. And my understanding of scholarly publishing in the University Press business, about which I know some, is that its mission is to make the fruits of scholarly research available to various publics. This is a big thing, and so I'm going to talk a fair amount about that. It's also an auspicious moment because today in Silicon Valley, Mary Meeker, this woman, gave her annual State of the Internet talk. And I am a publisher and not a scholar or an author, which means I don't write the books, but I point at them. And I want to point at this report because Mary Meeker for 20 years has been by far, maybe 25, the most insightful and accurate prognosticator about the future of the Internet in America, or maybe in the world. And even when she's too early or not quite right, she's so influential that she actually moves entrepreneurs, and she moves the technology, and she moves investment. And so I wrote down the URL here, I'll tweet it out later so you don't have to write it down. But more than I can say about the fundamental forces that are shaping technology today and in the coming, couple years, she's going to say. She works, or has said. I read her whole report, the whole report at lunchtime, and I stole some of it for you. So, curation is another privilege of a publisher and a marketer, and I really want to point you at it. And I'm not going to try and deliver her content, but I want to excite you with some of it so that those of you who care about how transformative some of this stuff is, read her work. I was very excited by the topic of this conference, who's at stake and what's at stake, and I took for my organizing principle those very big questions, who's doing what are we doing, why do we do it, and so I'm gonna use that as my sort of organizing principle. Who am I? Kent introduced me, so I'm not going to spend much time on it, except to say that I'm both a publisher and a marketer and a strategist, and also a theater director, and I'm a really left brain and right brain guy, and I think we're in a left brain and right brain moment in our respective industries, and it really takes some combination of creativity and sort of strategic thinking and analytics to kind of make your way through. And so I'm fortunate to have not been able to make up my mind between the two, I suppose, for many years. Who is Perseus Books Group, which is the place I've been working for the last 10 years? I thought I'd tell you a little bit about that so you know where I'm coming from. And this is a slide I often put up, although I realize it's not particularly scholarly. Go the fuck to sleep, for example, Emily is going to need pretty soon. And any of you with children, I highly recommend this book. Don't read it to them, but just watch the slow mental breakdown of a man who hasn't slept in months. But I do want to say that we are a scholarly publisher as well, and a publisher of serious nonfiction. Many of you might know Basic Books. We're the publisher of Richard Feynman, all of his works. I picked this one because he's playing the bongos in it. Go to Les Scherbach. Sherry Turkle, who teaches at MIT and has done seminal work on the effects of digital technology on people's interpersonal relationships. So between Westview Press and Basic Books, we have been a serious nonfiction publisher for a long time. But I think it might be useful to just wind back to give you context for what I'm going to talk about, to who the company was when I joined it in 2004. Myself, the current CEO, David Steinberger, and I came pretty much at the same moment. And Perseus Books was a small, niche publisher that had been put together by acquisition. The imprints were not near each other. There was one in Boston and one in New York and one in Philadelphia and one in Boulder, Colorado. It didn't even do its own distribution, so HarperCollins was the sales and distribution operation. It had this phenomenal 50-year backlist from some of the imprints, and it was losing a ton of money. And so one of the things I want to point out is that pretty much everything we've done since then came from a place of no resources. And I want to emphasize that because when you're sitting around thinking, well, how can we, innovate or change or make new things happen or participate in a fast-changing industry, we're so small, or we only have a handful of people, or whatever. I'm here to tell you you can, because a lot of what we did mostly with sweat and with persistence and tenacity rather than with gobs of cash. So the company, before we got there, was a set of acquired imprints, and when we got there, we did a little bit of fixing things, publishing fewer books, trying to have better measurement and better management and better controls and all that kind of stuff. And then a couple years later, we started to grow and transform the business. We got into the services business, so we weren't just a publisher, we were a supplier of important services to other publishers. We got into digital in a huge way in 2008. We started making partnerships with other branded entities, other kinds of content. And the biggest thing we did, frankly, was say to ourselves, what business are we in? And when you asked everybody who worked there at the time that I showed up, what is this business, they would say, well, we're a publisher. And it doesn't seem like an enormous shift, but our shift was to say, actually, we're in the publishing business. But we're pretty sure publishing is changing and going to keep changing. And simply by saying we're in the publishing business, and we have several businesses, some of them are imprints, but other things might be something else, it allowed us to think differently about change, and a little less about holding on to the existing business definition. And so that redefining who we are and what we did turned out to be pretty seminal, because today, 10 years later, it's 10 publishing groups, it's 4 big services businesses in 9 locations, it's 650 employees. We not only took physical and digital distribution in-house, but we turned those into services for other independent publishers, and we have 300 or so physical distribution clients. We have 430 other publishers that we are their digital, that we're the way they get digital, and not just digital distribution, but conversion and marketing and a whole lot of other things. We've got a bunch of partnerships. We're 5 times the size of the company we were 10 years ago. And just last week, maybe, we announced that we were happy to announce that we had been chosen by Princeton University Press and by the University of California Press as their distribution partner, which they had run long, and they may be here, long processes to choose new partners. So that's a big journey, and a lot of it came from that one switch, the switch of saying, yes, we're a publisher, but we think of ourselves as being in the publishing business. And a lot of the folks there, or everyone there, were exceptionally good at their jobs, but they had never built new businesses, and so we really had to do a lot of the stuff by bootstrap. But one of the things we went around and said internally, and I say to you, is whose job is it to innovate? And I'm pointing at you, it's impolite, but it's everybody. And innovation doesn't necessarily mean you think of something no one's ever thought of and then you go do it. It might simply mean that you do something that your company hasn't done before that needs to be done, or that in your segment of the market hasn't been done, but it's been done elsewhere. And so we take a broad view of what innovation means, and we think it simply means to sort of lean into productive change. Simply deciding what to publish every year is and every season is a huge task, but it is not the only task of a company that wants to survive and thrive. You have to think, what else needs to be done. So you've probably seen this list on the left, but if we were going to move from who am I and who is Perseus to why innovate, you don't have to go back very far, but at the time when I joined Perseus, none of these things really existed. Yes, Facebook didn't exist, Twitter was a sound. I stole this, but then it's so much fun, I felt I had to write some of my own. Kindle was starting a fire. Borders was wasn't what Putin was ignoring. The Washington Post had a book review section, and you from Washington, there's a woman named Oprah, and she had a really big TV show, and she talked about books, and it was really important if you were a trade book publisher. There were 2,000 independent bookstores in 2004. A MOOC was, a cow hiccuping. You can write these yourself. Chegg, it was a college stunt of some kind, I think. It's a very fast-moving world. Really, if you go back 10 years before that, the big change was Amazon. If you go back 10 years before that, the big change was like mall bookstores or superstores. The pace of change in publishing had been like, hey, every 10 years or so, there's one big change in the business. The last 10 years has been one, pardon my French, damn thing after another. So why think about innovation? Why innovate? Because you must. Publishing is fundamentally in transformation. My father, speaking of Boston, got a couple degrees from MIT and was a sort of a software guy his whole life. And when he and I were talking in the last 2 or 3 years or 5 years about what's happened in publishing as it became a digital business, he said, welcome to the treadmill. Because once the business goes digital, it's like the Terminator, it will absolutely not stop, right, until you kill it. And you're not going to kill it. So publishing is in transformation, not at this point in time, as a fundamental state. I don't need to tell you guys that the pressure on academic and scholarly publishing, university presses, is pretty serious at the institutional level. All you have to be is consumers to notice that the retail environment is radically changing. I would ask any of you, have you been to a record store lately? I'm sure there's probably one left somewhere in Cambridge. But, bookstores, oddly and interestingly, hanging in. But, the retail environment for all media products is fundamentally different. Do any of you, aside from those of you who woke up this morning in a hotel, still read a paper newspaper? Maybe one. A quarter. Okay, I like you people. You're my people. These are my people. Just as a digression, I love being in a room with publishers and librarians and book people, because the story my mother likes to tell most about me is that I came home from, walking home from school one day, and I was all bruised and covered with blood, and I was maybe 7. And she said, oh my God, what happened? Did you get into a fight? And I said, oh no, I was reading a book while walking home and I ran into a mailbox. So these are my people. But massive changes in consumer behavior, right? The paper newspaper, the record store, the idea of watching television programs at the time when they air. I mean, it's, tell me, any of you, who's binge-watched House of Cards? Somebody, yes, not just me. Oh, thank God. Not just me. So we're really, there's really transformative changes in consumer behavior. The appearance of new business models, I'm going to talk a little bit about, the downscaling of the physical print infrastructure. If you need more, I could keep going, you don't need me to, but this ought to be a good reminder that innovation is really not a luxury. The risky thing today would be to stand still. But also, not to be a downer, you should innovate because you can. The infrastructure for innovation has gotten very sophisticated and also very easy. There are plug-and-play platforms. If you want to start a new business, you don't have to go hire Salesforce. You could potentially use Salesforce.com. You don't have to go necessarily hire or create a whole accounting department, because you can plug and play with Paychex. And you don't need a distribution platform if your business is digital. You don't have to go out and build the internet. It exists for you. And when I started out in business and advertising, you had a new product and you want people to know about it, you had to pay a lot of money to advertise it. You can get to consumers directly now for free. I don't know if any of you have heard of Dollar Shave Club, but they decided to create a subscription razor business. They made one ad. They put it up on the internet. They didn't pay a dime ever to run it on national television, and it got like 9 million hits in 3 months, and they have a 1.5 million subscribers in 3 months. It would have been unheard of in an era before the platform to reach consumers directly for free instantly existed. So plug-and-play platforms. It's also fascinating, really, how much the definition of media is somewhat irrelevant anymore. And I really urge you all to think about relaxing your own notion of what the definition of the media definition of your product is. I defy you to tell me the difference between TimeMagazine.com, a magazine, and Slate, or some other blog. What is a magazine versus a well-written content blog? Some of the New York Times site looks a lot like the same as the Slate site. What's the difference between a newspaper online? So these little media definitions actually are helpful, because what it is doesn't matter so much anymore, and the walls the expensive walls that kept all of those media separate have disappeared. It's a lot easier to get visibility. Consumers are open to try things. used to be a big, big difficult thing to get consumers to change their behavioral patterns, in part because they really had to change where their feet walked or how they spent their, their dollars. And here, if you can shift how they spend their time first, you can charge them later. Another reason to really embrace or lean into innovation is because we're very much in a time when expertise matters, where authenticity matters, where knowledge matters, and that's your space. You have the experts. It's shocking to me how you can get, of course, this is our stock in trade as publishers, but you can get an author onto a radio show, on NPR, or whatever, to talk, and the reason you can get them on is because they have a new book. Try getting that author on a show when they don't have a new book. You can get it only when something happens in the world about which they're an expert, like, our author Timothy Snyder, who wrote this book called Bloodlands about the Ukraine and Eastern Europe from World War II to 1970. We couldn't get that guy booked to save our lives until, Crimea fell, and now he's a busy guy. But the fact that he's an expert and has a book, that book, oddly, maybe it'll sell 50,000 copies. It's not a lot, necessarily, or 25,000 copies. But the cultural value, the cultural leverage of being an expert, and nothing says that you've thought long and deeply about a subject more than that you've produced a work that's as substantial as a book. And so expertise matters, content matters. And this last point, there was more money coming into the publishing business, new money, investor money, than I have seen in 25 years in the last 4 or so. The investor community has gone from thinking, I think 5 years ago, well, publishing, it's all about to get crushed like the music business was crushed by digital, to thinking, oh my gosh, there's so many interesting plays here. I just cribbed from Michael Cater in Publisher's Lunch from a week or two ago. This is 4 months worth of investments or acquisitions in publishing. Some of them are interesting. I think Amazon bought Comixology to extinguish it as a competitor. But maybe even Goodreads the same, which was more than 4 months ago. But this level of activity of either investment or acquisition is pretty surprising and not typical. So it's actually a time where money can be outside money can be had if you have a good idea. So with that as a set of kind of inside the industry or inside the media industry trends, I want to hit a couple of really big picture trends, some of which I've stolen from Mary Meeker, either from this year's report, which I read at lunchtime, or from last year or the year before's report. But it's worth reminding ourselves that we're in the midst of the largest expansion in computing power in the hands of individuals that has ever been. Smartphones and tablets are growing faster than PCs ever did. There is no single year in the history of personal computing, PCs, that even remotely resembles what happened with tablets last year, which went up 52% to 400 million units. There are 1.5 billion smartphones in use. It's about 20% of the 5 billion mobile phone market. Mark Andreessen predicts that there will be 5 billion smartphones by 2020. That puts in your pockets, in our pockets, more computing power and connectivity than has ever been possible. A lot of it, the majority of it, outside the United States. And for, again, I don't know your businesses in detail, but you have global audiences, you have international audiences for the things you publish, and those audiences have not always been the easiest to reach. That distance is being defeated by that kind of ubiquitous power. Nearly ubiquitous high-speed connectivity through a wireless broadband. The amount of internet surfing that's actually happening on the phone went from 14 to 19% this year. So about 19%, almost 20% of all internet traffic from mobile. There's an absolute tsunami of consumer content, something like 100 million photos. 100, no, is it? 10 million photos, sorry, are uploaded to the web in some fashion every day. And never mind, you know, status updates and blog posts and all that other kind of content. And frankly, what's interesting about that is, if you think about it, everybody is an author and a publisher now. And so the task of trying to make your content jump out gets harder. I'm not going to spend any time on wearables, drivable scannables, all of which would have seemed like science fiction 5 or 6 years ago. I've seen the Google self-driving car in person. It is stunning. My best friend from high school, a guy named Mike Cassidy, is the guy who's doing the Google Balloon Internet, which is trying to get the internet to places that no other technology can reach. I think people thought they were kidding when they announced this 6 months ago or 10 months ago, but they're absolutely doing it. This entire set of technologies like Fitbit, which I don't know if any of you are sort of personal health data junkies, but that market is absolutely the next frontier. And the most encouraging thing in the Mary Meeker report from today is that she does a pretty good historical analysis of the total capitalization of tech companies, and it's at about 19% of the S&P 500. The peak in 2000 was 36%, so, and it's pretty stable and pretty flat, so she doesn't think we're in the middle of some tech bubble that's that's stock market led, so we shouldn't be in danger of getting our hopes up and putting time and energy into technologies that are in a general sense, going to run out of cash. I want to touch 5 trends. These are mine, not hers, or some combination of the two that I think you should keep in mind as you think about what to do with your businesses that include scholarly publishing, but may include other things. We're coming from a long history of business being asset heavy, meaning you have offices and you have stores, or you have printers, and you have an HR department, and you have physical goods like a music CD or a physical hardcover book. We come from a world in which most businesses owned their main infrastructure, in which innovation was built inside, everybody was jealously guarding their own innovative ideas and trying to keep other people from finding out about them. From a world where, especially in the media business, where most of the innovation was around product and product definition, and where the mechanics of making things and building things was the mechanics of work. And while those things are all still true, we're seeing a massive shifts in the sort of entrepreneurial culture, and also in successful consumer businesses, to asset light, meaning the consumers that you wouldn't have, we all used to have shelves and shelves and shelves of CDs or of records in our apartments, in our houses, in our lives, and yet people seem very comfortable now having a lot of their media in the cloud. Not only comfortable, but they prefer it because they can have it wherever they want at all times. I don't know if any of you who have come in from out of town are actually staying in an Airbnb today, but I guarantee you 3 years from now, wherever this conference is, some of you will. And that is a massive asset-light play that says, I don't have to build a hotel to create new rooms for people. I just have to harness the rooms that exist using some kind of matching and community building and rating infrastructure. And it's just Match.com for a place to stay. That's asset-light. That's shared infrastructure. The move from secretive corporate R&D to open innovation, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we roll on, is a big shift where people collaborate to build. And you're seeing more and more of that with hackathons and challenge posts and other kind of multiplayer processes, ones where, those of you who use Netflix, you may or may not know that Netflix was really frustrated with their own inability to create a recommendation engine that worked, that they liked, that functioned well, that somehow matched intuition and curation. And they built and were frustrated with it to the point where 4 years ago, I think now, they decided that they were going to put $1 million bounty out, a challenge out, and say, please do better than we've been able to do at coming up with a recommendation engine. They got 315 companies who submitted algorithms. They got to see all of them, pick one, award them $1 million, and then do what they wanted with it. And they say they got a better engine faster and for less money by putting the problem to the market than they did for 4 years in a row of trying to do it themselves. So that's open innovation. A lot of process innovation in the marketplace, not just the product, but the process. I'm wearing Warby Parker glasses. Has anybody ever heard of Warby Parker? Yes. So, Warby Parker these are $99. I had been paying $350 for a pair of glasses before this. But the real thing that got me was not that I saved money on glasses. It's that I used to go into Lens Crafters because I needed new glasses. And maybe I could convince my wife to come with me, or maybe I couldn't. And I would sit there and I would try glasses on and go, I don't know. Is that good? I don't know. I hate looking at myself in these glasses. What am I going to ask the salesperson? They don't know me. And the genius thing that Warby Parker came up with was, we're going to send you look at all of our glasses on the internet, pick 5, we'll send them to you, you can put them on, you can take pictures of yourself in them, you can post them on Facebook and ask everyone you know, do you like these glasses on me? And then, a lot of them be like, I like those, and then you mail them back, and then they send you the glasses. And they reinvented the process of trying on and deciding what glasses to wear. And every single retail industry and every single vertical has some version of that kind of discovery and process reinvention. And so I would suggest that's something to think about. Don't just think about, this is the book we published, this is the journal we published, but think about that process. One of the reasons we've been successful in providing services to independent publishers was to ask them and ourselves, what do you wish existed that doesn't? And to create services that meet those needs. And gamification, which I'm not going to talk about in great detail, but those of you who are Fitbit wearers, those of you who, care about points on OpenTable or in any of your airlines. All of that is just a gamification. It's a point keeping track of, competing with other people. Foursquare is a fundamental force that has absolutely changes consumer behavior and creates opportunities. So Mary Meeker, again, who I'm going to keep shouting out to because I really want you guys to read her work, last year in her State of the Internet report called this that we were in the reimagination of everything phase. Don't just think about it as computing and technology, but industry by industry, vertical by vertical, people are taking a look at the business model and going, we could do it completely differently. Whether it's Spotify or Pandora in music, or Netflix for video, or Hulu for video, whether it's Chegg for textbooks, or Square for wallet. Square went from I didn't see it anywhere to I saw it at every single, at Christmas when you go to the little, shops out by Columbus Circle where I work, everybody had an iPhone and Square, and I was, it completely changed the way they did their retail transactions. Kickstarter for social funding, or Code Academy for learning to code, or Airbnb, which I mentioned, or Uber for hailing a car service. These are not just online ordering, or they are complete rethinks of the process of doing the thing that's being done, and a very asset-light content plus community plus connectivity play. And actually, Mary Meeker's a great encapsulation of what these forces are is some combination of computing power, connectivity, UI, user interface, and beauty. And I really love that last one because you know how you feel when you're in the hands of a product or service that has some aesthetic to it. And as publishers, I think we really care about that. We care about the end flaps and the French flaps and the in the paper if you're into those kinds of things. Or we did the complete works of Richard Feynman. It's this big huge $199 book. it is really, in a sense, a totem for the people who care, who already know the work. They're not buying it as much to read it, although they read it, as to have it, to possess it, because it is a thing of beauty. It speaks to them as scientists or as physicists. And anyone, I'm saying this to you, but I bet in most of your catalogs, or if you're a librarian in your collections, you know there are books that behave like this, that you must own, and you own them not simply because of their content, but they speak to you as objects. And so we're in a time where innovation really combines not just the content and the computing power and your interaction with it, but its aesthetics. So with that as a sort of the big picture, I move from who and why a little bit to what. What are we as a publisher and as a publishing services company working on? And I picked a couple things that we're doing or have done in the last 2 or 3 years because I think they're potentially broadly applicable. They're not about any one content area. We are travel publishers, and we're science publishers, and we're history publishers, and rather than talk about the details of any category, I thought I would talk about some of the things that cut across. So here's what we're working on: discovery, social listening. I don't have a good word for this yet, and please, at the cocktail party afterwards, come up and tell me what we should call this. I'm going to call them travelers. I'm socializing a need for here, so I really hope I can stand up at a talk in a couple of months and say, I met this person in Boston and they finally named it for me, or whatever. Business models and analytics. I mean, there are other things we're working on, but these are pretty broadly applicable. Let's talk about discovery for a minute. Here's how I like to think about it. Christopher Columbus was a discoverer. I think about him every day, and the reason I think about him every day is I work on 57th Street and 8th Avenue in New York City, and so I work at Columbus Circle. And this is what the view from my window looked like 100 years ago. That's Columbus Circle. That little column in the middle there, that was built by Italian Americans, and standing on top of that column is Christopher Columbus. I've seen him for 25 years when I come to New York. He looks like this now. That's the Time Warner Center behind it. I don't even think about it. I don't think about Columbus. I don't think about Columbus as a man, or I don't think about history or cultural appropriation or any of the million things that Christopher Columbus connects to. But there's a Japanese artist who came last year and did this to the statue. And I don't know if any of you were in New York for the 2 or 3 months that this was up, but he built a big scaffolding around it, and at the top of that scaffolding he built a room, and there's Christopher Columbus. And it was free, and you had to make a reservation, and the reservations were hard to get, and everyone wanted to go to this room. Why? We all know this story. We know Christopher Columbus, but somehow this thing that was very remote from us, very far from us, suddenly we got to get, in a room. We could sit and, chat. We didn't chat with him, but it was an interesting room. And the very next thing I did when I finally got a chance to see this was I went, pulled out my phone, and I typed in Christopher Columbus on Amazon. There are 7,978 books that come up when you type Christopher Columbus into Amazon. And I found this to be a very powerful metaphor for the following. Everywhere in the world, at any moment, there are a million things that you might want to know more about. And some of them are just not salient to you. They don't appear in your consciousness. But frankly, when you walk by Columbus Circle, wouldn't it be interesting if your pocket kind of buzzed, and because they know you're from Italy, or maybe they know you're from Jersey, and because they know you like history, or maybe because they know you like pizza, or they know 1 or 2 other things about you, and they know where you're standing, a book or an article or a song or something gets recommended. So I think that it was fascinating to me how much people cared about getting in a room with Christopher Columbus because someone built essentially the infrastructure to make it closer to them, to bring it closer to them. And if this is not too much of a stretch, the infrastructure to get you closer is metadata. Yeah? That's the thing. That's the aha I had, which is, if the metadata were better and more ubiquitous and more updated and maybe sensitive to context or sensitive to knowing some stuff about me, all of a sudden, things would surface to my consciousness. Not just that which has gotten booked by, Jon Stewart as a guest on his show, and not just the article, the book that the New York Times book review decides to feature, but, the world and context. And so I started ruminating on discovery, and I thought, God, we should get a lot better at this. I don't know what to study or who to hire or what vendor to go to say, how do we do for book discovery what this Japanese artist, and he goes all around the world and gets people closer to public works of art like this. How do we do for books what he did? And this is what I came up with. I don't have an answer, so I need to convene a party for which discovery is the topic. And I looked around to see if anybody was doing it, and I knew there had been hackathons all over the world on various topics, and I was surprised to find that no one had done one for publishing, and then that meant that I had to do one, because I had a burning question, which is, can discovery be reinvented in an era of computing in my pocket that knows where I'm standing and knows me, and the corpus of books? And so this was a year and a half ago. We decided to do this in January of 2013, and it took place exactly a year ago this week. We ran a publishing hackathon, and I'm going to give you just a flavor of it, if this works, by hitting this. Maybe it'll work. Yeah.
How does a book, which is often a thoughtful, long, and quiet object, get discovered?
Digital is great for hunters, not so great for gatherers. If you know what you want, it's very easy to find it. That's a solved problem. Negative side of the problem for the person who doesn't know what they want to read next. And that's what we're here working on today.
So we're bringing together the most innovative people, not only from within the book publishing industry, but the great technology developers out there from across New York City.
As if by magic, can you make
coverless to solve book discovery?
A virtual bookstore.
Image-based.
Find a good book to read while you're traveling.
An app for romance novel readers to find books based on how much steam they want in them.
An app that will let you use your location to discover literature.
A platform that will allow people to discover books and at the same time discover each other and most importantly themselves.
As if by magic, can you make the right book appear at the right moment in front of someone?
The finalists from here are going to be competing at
Connectivity. So you get the idea. So we convened this hackathon. We'd never done one before. We made this subject book discovery. We had 200 plus people show up. Tarek was there. He and his team was a finalist. If you know him, you should ask him about it. We got down to 6 finalists, and then those finalists had 2 weeks to sort of sharpen up their demo and their idea. And then at Book Expo, they pitched their discovery ideas to a set of judges that included Alexis Ohanian, who founded Reddit, Randy Zuckerberg, the first marketing director for Facebook, go figure, the sister of Mark Zuckerberg, Doug Rushkoff, one of the founders of Code Academy, venture capitalist, the head of the literary department from William Morris, the CEO of my company, because I had to give him something to do. And the discovery ideas that sort of made it to the final were really interesting. They were things like book recommendations that were location sensitive, book recommendations that surfaced books based on your opting into letting the recommendation engine know your browser history. Book recommendations that had to do with finding books, fiction books you hadn't read, based on sort of the way the characters in various books resemble each other or relate to each other, kind of a character DNA, and many other things. And I'll tell you, in doing that hackathon, and the reason we did it is because we learned a lot. And I'm going to tell you what we learned, if I can find the page. And the biggest thing we learned, actually, is that our metadata, the data about all of our books, the author, the title, the content, the jacket image, the description, the categories, all of that, were not that accessible to anybody who wasn't already a retailer or a library or a partner. And we kept, in that weekend of the hackathon, hearing people say, designers and coders and entrepreneurs, 10,000, or us plus clients, 30,000 titles. You had to go through a setup process and learn how to take our metadata feeds. And we didn't do that for just anybody because it was a pain. So one of the things we learned is that we had to create a new system to make the data about our books more easily available and more self-serve, and to cover more information about more aspects, to take unconventional metadata, for example, and also to be updatable, because the other thing we found is most of our metadata was entered when the book was created, and then we never touched it again, unless it won the Pulitzer Prize. And then we would go and say, winner of the 2013 Pulitzer, we'd get that in the metadata. And the new jacket with the little, Pulitzer Prize seal on it. But but the truth is, one of the big things we discovered is the metadata should change all the time, because the world keeps recontexting books new. If you've got books in your history backlist about Crimea, or any of these, anything that's happening, you ought to get it. You ought to get that in the metadata so that it comes up. So we learned that a couple other things. If you have problems that you think your company, or more importantly, your industry needs solving, that need to be solved, you actually have to tell people. You have to tell people who don't work in your industry, the kind of people who like to attack technical problems or process problems or even design problems. And so one of the things we learned in this hackathon was to socialize the things we need. We also learned that experimenting stuff around stuff generally beats studying it. Somehow we would study things endlessly, and when we tried to experiment, we learned things faster, including what was a terrible idea. We started collaborating with other companies more, and we realized that we didn't have a lot of time and energy to devote all by ourselves as a not very big company to some of these problems, but if we could put together 4 or 5 or 10 people from a couple companies, we could get much further. We learned about open innovation and the idea of putting challenges out into the world in some structured way. And then the last thing, which I mentioned, the big aha, which is that, and I'm out of slideshow mode, that we needed a whole new kind of API process for our metadata. So, a couple months after our hackathon, HarperCollins announced a big challenge for problems that they wanted solved. About 3 months ago, the bookseller in London announced that they were going to do their first ever hackathon in London. I don't think there's magic to it, but I think it's an example of sort of provoking the marketplace and yourself, and you're part of the industry, to come together and swarm around a question or an opportunity or a problem, and we learned a ton. And I thought it was very interesting, just last week or the week before, that one of the most respected tech journalists, Matthew Panzarino, in TechCrunch said, we're really getting to a place where a lot of the apps are not so much things you go to, but things that surface stuff for you. And I think book recommendations and content discovery is a great thing to behave like that. Would I like someone to be able to go to an app and get a book recommendation? Sure, but even more than that, I want people who aren't looking to get given a provocation that is so apt, and so spot on that they're like, oh my God, thank you. And I'm going to act on that. And so that's the kind of thing that's happening. I'm going to touch very quickly in the last couple of minutes here, like in a speed tour of a couple other things we're doing, just enough so that if you want to pull this presentation down, you'll be able to get at it. The next one is social listening. We've spent the last 3 years testing every social listening platform that exists. We've settled on one that we like called Foresight by Crimson Hexagon. Crimson Hexagon is a Harvard University spinoff. It's a bunch of Harvard University data scientists, so it's a yay Boston. And the reason we've been going at this is because we think for the same reason I've been talking about the hackathon and discovery, that the world is full of people that would read your books if only they knew about them. And the best way to get them to know about them isn't to spam out a lot of marketing or a lot of publicity. It's actually to try and find conversations that are already going on about the topics that your books or your articles or your journals contain, and in a sort of an elegant and organic and apropos way, getting that content into the conversation. In order to do that, you need an analytic and research tool that allows you to parse that conversation. And I want to say to you, I believe that in 3 years or 4 years in publishing, there won't be a publisher, including all of you, who don't have some tool or tools to analyze social media or social listening, because without it, you're just sort of, if you just put search terms into Google, you can't tell what's big, you can't see it on a timeline, you can't rank it by influencer order. I mean, just for fun, I took I'm going to skip this page for a second, the Thomas Piketty book, and I ran it through Foresight just to get a sense of how that worked. And across the top, those little tiny bars or the first month that it was on sale, and then you'll see the volume of social conversation took off. And one of the things we could use this for in a half an hour was to figure out who were the people that started talking about this book in March, and how did it cross from there to Krugman, and then from Krugman to everyone? Because I have other books like this 685 page translated from the French economics tome, and I want to know who are the folks that sort of bridged that conversation. And, a lot of these names on here, Tom Watson, Doug Henwood, Mehdi Hassan, they were not familiar to me, but they're sort of economics bloggers and various folk. And the conversation then shifted, a month later to, the New Yorker, Slate, BBC, The Nation, Gawker, everybody was writing about it. But that process of being able to take a comp title and analyze the social conversation is incredibly valuable, and I recommend it to you. Travelers, please come up and give me a better word for this, but one of the things that we realize is that the traditional content that we create, a jacket, a product description, a press release, flap copy, it doesn't travel very well. It doesn't it was built for a physical world, built for bookstore browsing. It is not necessarily built for sharing. And we spend a lot of time starting to try and think about, for every book and for every category, what kinds of things get noticed, what gets shared, what gets opened, and the same answers, not the same answers everywhere come up, but the things like images, and not jacket images, which are too commercial, but images, design, good design, or any design, strong emotions, humor, things where you ask people to take action. I'm not going to dive down deeply into it, but I want to give you 3 or 4 examples. Skinny Bitch is a book we published 8 years ago. It was turned down by every other publisher. We paid almost no money for it because it's the most restrictive diet book ever, and also very profane. But by word of mouth, it was selling 600 or 800 copies a week after a year, and we thought that was really a huge success. And then Posh Spice was looking for a house in Beverly Hills and walked into a bookstore on Rodeo Drive, saw the book, you can see it there in her hand, she picked it up. The pack of British photographers that was following her snapped this one picture, just one. That picture made it into the British newspaper, The Sun, the next day, and then a week later this book was #1 on Amazon, but only in the UK. Why? Because of the picture. Now, we didn't make the picture happen, but we had this picture, and we had the story. So then my CEO called the New York Times and said, this is an interesting story. Posh Spice, who is, let's face it, a skinny bitch, and she was laughing at herself. I'm only saying it because she said it. I can't, I'm a skinny bitch. She held up the book, and she was like, right? And then she literally was asked for a quote a week later, and she goes, I've never read a book. But I liked the cover. And I just want to say to you, and this book then went to #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, and it stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for 3 years. My point is, there were a lot of people who turned out were interested in this book. They had just never seen it, and they didn't see it until a picture, not the cover, surfaced it in their consciousness. And so I give you that. I don't know if any of you have been following Boko Haram and the girls who were kidnapped in Nigeria, or this hashtag, Bring Back Our Girls. If you do the research on Twitter, you can see all the influencers and the place this hashtag has gone. But what's much more interesting to me is that this version of the hashtag is the one that traveled best. It's just the hashtag, but it's more than that. It's a picture, and it carries interesting information. It says who's behind it. You see a lot of this online nowadays. I'll give you one more. Oh, that's Capital. I don't know why that's there. Oh, Capital. So Capital, which is broken out huge, it's not that easy to explain its fundamental premise, but you'll notice there's been a whole lot of articles, explainer articles, trying to explain the fundamental premises of Capital, and this little blackboard chart is one of the best traveled graphics on Twitter, which is just the returns to growth or income never really grow, and the returns to capital do, and that's the fundamental premise of the book. And it's just an easy way to get the conversation started, images. And so I say to you, it's because I've been working on this with my company, and it's hard. We've all got to think more about what assets travel, and whether in our process of building our books and our products and our services, are we also creating those things that capture some essence of the subject, even if it's just words on a piece of paper. Mary Meeker will tell you that the platforms, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, Vine, Snapchat, etc., that have a visual component are the ones that are growing the fastest. So, and finally, anything which asks you to take action. We had a diet book called The Lean. We built a set of badges. The badges were for if you were trying to lose weight and be healthier, you could post every day on Pinterest or Facebook.